All right. Good evening, everyone. Right. Today's webinar will be the dive into GraphQL for new developer experience. Good evening, everyone. Okay. Let's wait for a few minutes to let the participant in. So we will we'll take off officially in another 4 minutes.
Yep.
All right. I think we can get started. Right. Good evening again, everyone. Yeah, so today's topic will be the dive into GraphQL for new developer experience. So before we begin, so we don't want to know about ourselves. So we are from the 99X Malaysia team. So myself, I'm Jay Prashant, a senior software engineer. And I would like to introduce my partner for today. So Cici, would like to share a bit about yourself?
Yeah, good evening, everyone. My name is Chi Chong. You can call me Cici. Yeah, I work as a software engineer for more than 4 years, and then most of the project I work as a full stack developer. So I feel so lucky to involve in all those projects. So I have the opportunity to understand the whole structure of every kind of projects, and then I have some experience on the .NET Core, C Sharp, PHP coordinator, and also the Angular, JavaScript, TypeScript, and also the database like SQL Server and MySQL, Microsoft, yeah, and so on. And then yeah, also I have some valuable experience working with the DevOps teams before, so I kind of yeah feeling lucky of having opportunity to learn about the infrastructure setups for the project as well. Yeah,
All right.
that's it.
Thank you very much, CC. Yeah, lucky to have you here too. Right. So let's get to it. So before we go into GraphQL, let's I would like to take everybody through a refresher and have a quick look at what API is about. So API is everywhere. So yeah, the keyword I would like to point out is enabling and connecting. So what is API in general? So I think most of us, we have smartphone devices with us, and what happens in the background is somewhat of a mystery to the lay person, but for those who are working with API may already know what is going on, how there are multiple apps on our phone, and how is the communicating with servers which are remote uh, and away from us, storing our data. So API is about enabling this communication between these multiple applications. And I think what we know so far is like there are API, but what are the types of API out there? So there are a few. For example, like I mentioned about the smartphone. So that is more of a private API. Without, like say for example, if you're using a social media app, like for example, Instagram or Facebook or something that is Twitter, I mean X, those are using authentication. So those are in the background are running private APIs. Then we also do have public API, which are more common among organizations that are, for example, the government. And also, I think quite popular one would be like the weather API. So that a quick detour to seeing a public API. So I do have a browser tab open here to share with everybody this public API. So from here, you can actually see that we do not need to go through any authentication. This is accessible from by anybody, including you and me. So there is no authentication required. And if you were to dive into the data provided, we could actually see there's a REST API that is actually taking place, and this is how we are retrieving the data. So coming back to our slide, right? So what are the other types of technology? So I did mention draft SQL and REST. So there are actually a few types that are already present today. There are, for example, SOAP, gRPC, and webhooks and more. So I think it's about time we get into the real topic of today. No, actually it's not SOAP, but GraphQL. So let's go into it. So why the focus here is we are going to talk about improving the developer experience using GraphQL today. So let me talk about GraphQL experience. So before we to go further, maybe some of you actually have heard of SQL. So maybe this may ring a bell. So the QL is actually the same query language, but let's break it down and try to understand what GraphQL is all about. So firstly, graph. So graph is referring as the thinking model in GraphQL. So if you to take real world objects, for example, maybe a library management system, which will be the user story that we'll be focusing today. So this, as you know, what a graph is basically a node with edges and vertices. So the individual node to be represented in terms of real world object, like for example, the library member, the books and the authors. So this gives you a rough idea of how we are actually visualizing our data. Then coming to the query language. So in GraphQL, we actually use query languages that look somewhat like this. So you can see we are accessing by a very straightforward language. And I would like to also reference that we do have a GraphQL do have a it is open source and it's available for everyone. So you may dive after this seminar, you to actually take a look closer if you are interested. But right now, I would like to invite CC to talk about the flexible developer experience. So the floor is yours.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I'm here to talk about the flexibility of the GraphQL. So we have a lot of advantage using the GraphQL compared to the REST API. One of the most important thing is the precise data retrieval, which means that we can actually select any kind of data that we exactly we want, so that we don't need to retrieve like extra data like the normal API. Once we retrieving, it will respond with fixed data. So, but with GraphQL, you can choose what you want. Yeah, so with this, we actually have the ability to fit the modern compatibility. So from here, actually, right now we have a lot of the software like applications like mobile and also the web or any backend application, or yeah, we have a lot of different clients. So from there, we will be having a lot of different requirements. So for GraphQL, it can fit most of the data requirement from the clients. Right. And then after that we have the query performance and the caching. So actually the query performance and caching is not that mature yet for GraphQL, because it's a very different query compared to the REST API. So but right now the query and the caching is evolving for GraphQL. So I believe in the future we will have a very good performance and caching tools to use for GraphQL. And then yeah, we also have the strong typing for the GraphQL, which means every data type we will be stick to one very strict typing. So we can prevent some errors, like maybe in the database I change a column, I change the column into a different object or different type, and then I didn't do the changes in the backend. So in this case, it will throw the error immediately, and we cannot run until we fix that. Yeah, so it will make code more maintainable and also preventing some developer errors. Yeah. So yeah, most importantly, all of the requests we can do it in a single endpoint. Yeah, through GraphQL. Yes.
All right. Thank you, CC. So now let's move on to a deeper dive. So here I'll be switching over to my visual tool to actually share with everybody the basic setup of GraphQL using TypeScript and the Apollo server package. So let me switch over to my visual tool. Right. So right here, let's go through the basic of setting up a new project along with installing, setting up the node project. So just a little reminder, for this tutorial, we'll be using version 18. So in case you are following this video and you would like to try it out, that make sure you have the correct version installed on your machine, and then you can follow through. Okay, let me that through with the first step. So I will create a new directory. Yeah. So I'll be initializing the project here. Oh, All right. Then let's install the packages. So a bit of the Apollo server. So Apollo server helps to set up a sandbox environment rather than just running the GraphQL service alone. We'll be actually setting up a sandbox environment, which I will be showing later. So let me get this running first. That popular code. And since we'll be using TypeScript, I'll be also installing the necessary packages. All right. So right here, let me open this up. So we will be setting up we'll be creating a new file for the TypeScript configuration. So let me copy this as well. Right. So all this will be part of the basic setup for a TypeScript project. So let me quickly do it through this. All right then. Okay, so now we can create a index file first. For now, we shall leave this file blank before running the project. So we will need to add another file called types. So since we are using TypeScript, it's important that we maintain the strong typing and implement interfaces. So as mentioned earlier, we'll be focusing on the library management system. So let me create this new file. So as I created this type, I just want to quickly go through the objects that we'll be using. So we'll be having a library member, the book, and the author. So a little bit on the input later, but this will be the three object that we'll be focusing. So now we are done with the types. Let's move on to another file called the schema. So this schema will be important when we are using the Apollo server. So the Apollo server will require to know what sort of data types we are using. So let's create the new file. Okay, so let's take a moment to understand what's going on here. So inside the library, we have a few slightly unusual data type where in GraphQL we call it as ID. It's represented as a string, but it's used as an identifier. And we have other common properties like name, email, which will be represented as a string. Then as for this borrowed book, will actually be represented by our book type. So let's talk about the common types of data types that are available in GraphQL today. So as you have already seen ID and string, we do also have integer and Boolean. And there's one more, which is float, but we did not use in this example because there was no amount of pricing that we to use. And so that keep in mind, there are 5 types of data types available. And the rest will be example like the one that we have defined. So in book, we have the author type. So author is a self-created data type. So it references this. So after creating our 3 data types, there is another important type that we need to implement, which is the query. So this query type is quite important keyword in GraphQL. We'll be seeing another keyword later on. But as for now, let's look at query. So query here is something similar to our REST API. If you were to create the, for example, maybe we are retrieving it as a REST API. So we might be getting it something like this. So we have a backend and we have the API URL. The endpoint would look something like maybe books. Then the second one will actually be another endpoint that looks like, yeah. So this is one of the common API that we have seen in REST, where we are retrieving maybe either the entire list of books or the book by the individual ID. All right, so we are done with the schema. Let's move on to the next file. So GraphQL is able to be integrated with a database, but for this webinar today, we will be using a data file. I mean a file with the data as hard-coded into it so that we can preview the data. So let me create a new file, which I'll call it underscore dbts. Here we will put in the dummy data. Yep. So you can see here there are 3 sets of data: the library members, the author, and the books. So one thing you may notice that is slightly different from the schema. So the actual ID is represented here, not the entire object. So there is a difference uh, where we will be seeing when later on when we do the query. Okay, let's save that. And I think we can move on to the index file. All right. So briefly, I'll go over the code here. So here we are actually importing the packages that we need to run the Apollo server. So to configure the Apollo server directly, we need 2 information, which is the type definition, which comes from the schema file that we have created earlier. And there's also the resolver functions that we need to list them here. So each function here actually describe how we are querying, how we are retrieving the data from the backend with, for example, maybe when we are linking it with our database, we actually need to share how we are retrieving the data. So for this case, we'll be using direct import. And as you can see, this will match to the schema that we had created earlier. So library member. So this will match back to the schema here. So yeah, the order is not very important, but as long all the item that we listed in the query schema here have been defined in the resolver, then the execution will of the implementation of the GraphQL will be correct. So let's copy this code into the index file. So moving down, so there is an additional line here below the query. This is to actually show the relationship between the different data types. So in the library member, we do have reference to the book type. So here is actually explaining how we reference the data and retrieve the book ID, which matches to the book ID that is available in the library member type. Same applies to for book. Right. So moving down, just to show everyone the server configuration. So as mentioned, to configure Apollo server directly, we need to have the type definition and the resolvers. Right. So now we are ready to start. So next, it will be just to run the npm start. So from here, all right. Before that, make sure I save that change. So once running successfully, it will it will open up the port at 4000, which we have configured here. Then let's navigate to our browser. All right. So I have opened up the Apollo server sandbox environment. So this is the environment that we can actually do testing of our own code before integrating it with any other front-end solution. So here we have, let me clear this out. So here is where we can actually test out our query. So in GraphQL, the command to query data will be to retrieve data will be starting with query. Then here can be of any type. So for this example, that's a simple search query. And you may notice that there are some helpful information to the left. So these are actually the data types that are retrieved that we have created based on the type definition that we have entered to the Apollo server configuration. So here you can actually see that they inform us what are the available fields that we could retrieve. So I've selected author. So let me pull in all the authors. So as you can see, I'm done typing by the objects, the data type, then followed by the fields. So here I want to that the data ID name, maybe I leave out the verify. So as you can see, I'm able to retrieve the data successfully. So in a comparison with REST API, you can see that we do not need to get all the data. So we actually prevent term called overfetching. So we can actually define the query in a way that we only pull the data that we require. So if I don't need the ID, I can leave out the ID and that be verified. Yeah. So the same apply for the other types. So like for example, books, maybe I just want the ID, the title. And in case you have forgotten the fields, you to always refer back to the IDE, the environment in the sandbox here. So yeah, there are other fields besides a title. So there's like ISBN, the year. Right. So we are able to retrieve all the data that we have already have. And that is about query. So I think one more interesting thing, as I mentioned, the relationship. So we have books. So let's say we have the books, we have the title. How about the author? Yeah, so we defined earlier the relationship between the book and the author through the ID. So we are able to connect this and retrieve them as well. So author is name. So when we do the query like this, in this nested form, we are able to retrieve the authors as well. I think this is one of the interesting features that you can see within GraphQL. This is a very unique way of getting a collection of data, especially with the increase the complexity. So let me go back to our tutorial here. So there is another keyword that I want to introduce, which is mutation. So in the common CRUD pattern that we normally have in related to data fetching, we are able to create, we are able to read. So now how about the creating and updating and or deletion part? So that will fall under mutation in GraphQL. So just to quickly go over, so I will share one mutation, which will be on the delete. So what we need to do first is to go to the schema. So let me add that. So since we have already introduced the type query, now we need to introduce the type mutation. And I introduced, so similar to what I mentioned earlier. So this is like adding a new endpoint, like for deleting books. So now we are introducing another function. So delete book and delete author. So once we have done this in the type definition, we do need to do the same for the resolver. So resolver is declared in the index file. So let's add these changes as well. Yep. So this is where the resolver function is. So right at the bottom, I'll be adding the mutation. So upon adding the delete function, the delete book. So basically, the resolver, as I mentioned earlier, is about how we are doing the data retrieving logic with our backend. If in the case of a database, we are talking about how the deletion should take place. Maybe certain deletions are a soft delete or a hard delete. So in this case, we are doing the delete through the array. So now I made the changes and I need to restart the server. So let me restart that server. All right. All right. Okay. So let's take a look at the delete mutation. So here I have the query set up already. So we have the so the query will begin as similar to query. So the mutation itself will begin with the keyword mutation, and we will have a variable here. So we are actually passing the variable. So this will be like the parameter that we define in the REST API to be passed over. So here, as mentioned, we can modify this according to what we require. So for this case, when we run this delete author, we will be actually returning all a list of authors back. So as defined also in the schema in the form of the array. So the result should look like this. So what we can see here, the deletion is successful where the ID 2 is not removed from the list. So as you can see here, we have ID 1, 3, 4, and 5. So the author of ID 2 has been deleted. So we can also refer to the environment that been provided by the Apollo sandbox, the helpful information on the left. where did they actually tell us what are the available mutations. So we have done the delete author, and there's also the delete book available. So before I move over to the insert, let me go back here. So there will be also a way for us to do the insertion of new code, as well as doing the code update for records. So I would do one more. So let me do the add. So let me add the author type. So we then add it here in the schema. So as you can notice, there is something new here, which is the input. So input is another keyword that we can see that is unique to GraphQL, where this input actually is like a subcomponent of the original author type, but it is not the same due to the difference in the exclamation mark. So what does the exclamation mark here refers to is the enforcement of the null type. So if in the input, we can actually choose, I mean, for adding, we definitely do not want the anybody who is using the GraphQL to actually enter a null name or null boolean for the verified type. So it's important to enforce by the use of the exclamation mark. So later we'll see another use case where we do not need to use the exclamation mark, maybe in the case of update. So let's proceed on. Yeah, so as usual, after we make the change to the schema, we need to update the resolver. So since adding is also a mutation, we shall include it here. All right, let's save our changes and restart the server. Right. So let me do a restart. Okay, so let's look at the add. All right, so here, let's clean this up. So we'll do a new mutation. So this will be an add mutation. And here is where we enter the variable as shown earlier. All right. So now for this example, we'll be adding a new add author input. So we are adding add author input. So let me declare here. So this will be on add author input type. And then we will enforce the no null to make sure that we are not passing any nullable values. Then now we write in the method add author. That match the parameter here. So here we'll be expecting an input. So the add author input will consist of a name. So here I put in the author, and then the boolean. Let's make this true. and we'll be expecting a return of the new author. So it'll be of author type. So author, we have the ID, the name, and the verified. So here, when added successfully, we'll be able to see there is a new ID added to it. So this will be similar when you run in a database. You have the auto increment, the ID will be assigned, and there is the new value. So just to prove this once again, we can do the search. We can use a query to search all the authors. So like that, the name, the ID, name, and verify. Okay, let me make this to look neater. And there you do. We have seen the insertion of the new author successful. All right. So let's move on to the last mutation. So the last mutation I would like to share is on the update. So similar then, let's go over the process of adding this to the schema. So here we'll be adding the update member. So update member is like when your member have returned a book and going to their new book. So in this example, I've already updated the schema. So as per, all right. So one more thing to highlight then is on this input. So I'm not done with the schema. So let me add this new input. So just to point out the difference. So what the reason why inputs are very useful is that we do not need to reference back at the library member, but we can make an option where the name type is of nullable, meaning that we can allow null to pass and modify only the data that we need to change. Like for example, we only need to update the book ID or the email. So this is how input helps the flexibility of GraphQL. Right. So let's go to the change for the resolver. So then adding to the mutation, format this, right? So what happens here is that we fetch the update member will actually be fetching the ID that we were targeting, and then we'll pass the object where the edits are actually contained. So like focus on a use case where we are actually updating the book ID. So if we do find it, we'll map and create a new member of the array where it's actually retrieving the existing data and then overwriting it. So that will be in the terms of the data that we have prepared. And then we'll be returning the updated library member once successful. So as usual, let's close this and restart the server.
Yeah.
All right. So I have this update mutation query here. So let's, before we do the update, let's review the library members that we have. So maybe for this example, I will modify ID4. So ID4, let's also view the books that they have. Yeah, let's make it so that these member has written the book. So that means the book they have written will be an now value. So let's update. So going back to the mutation here. So we start off with the mutation keyword, then with the name of the mutation. So it can be of any name, then with the method that we have added. So then we can refer to the helper here. So update member. So the ID that we'll be targeting is of ID 4. And then we'll be removing the book type. So like book now. Oops. Right. So if successful, we should be able to reassign the book later on. So right now, the member for at least just Dacia has already returned the book, so there is no book available. So if we do double check here, yep, so the book has been returned. So this will be a good representation of a real world scenario where the member has returned the book. So that would conclude on my sharing of the TypeScript and Apollo server. So now I would like to pass over to CC to share on .NET Core and Hot Chocolate. So CC, yeah,
Yeah,
maybe you can share your screen right now.
yeah. But I think we could line up this session, so maybe we can share it next time. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, guys. Just to wind up the session. So that to quickly go over the differences. So we have seen earlier the comparison between the REST API and GraphQL. So CC, maybe you want to quickly walk through us through the differences?
Yeah, sure. So basically, I talked earlier about the flexibility. So here we can see comparing comparing the GraphQL and REST API regarding the performance. For the simple queries, as you can see from the showcase just now from Jaiprasan, for those simple queries, it will be very fast and very nice to use. But for the complex query, maybe we still have to stick to REST API. And then for the query complexity and probability wise, basically you have to decide it based on your requirement throughout your data and uh, client needs. And then, yeah, for the testability, I think both are nice to test as they are very nice tools to use. It also depends on the data that you use, but overall, I think GraphQL would be a little bit better at this case for the testability because of the strong typing schema that as we can see from the showcase just now. And then for the use case, yeah, for the REST API, we can use for very complex data requirements and also simple one. And then, but for GraphQL, for now, for dynamic data needs and also, but for the simple data, it will be better by using the GraphQL. Yeah, that's it.
All right. Thank you very much, CC. So before we wrap up the session, we do open to the floor for a quick round of Q&A. All right. Okay. I think we're not getting any questions. So yeah. All right. So I would like to wrap up the session. Too bad we didn't have the time to go through the .NET Core and Hot Chocolate, but if you those who are interested, you can actually check it out. And so I would like to say thank you everyone today. Any final words, CC?
Yeah, I hope you guys get some insights of the GraphQL throughout these sessions. Yeah, and thank you for joining and listening. Thank you guys.
Right. Thank you, everyone.